It's a routine day as Lee goes to the grocery to buy some supplies. Everything is as usual, until suddenly, out of nowhere, portals erupt and monsters flood out. The goblins quickly start slaughtering the supermarket patrons, sparing no one. Fortunately, Lee obtains a machete and defends himself. Thanks to his skill as a mercenary, he effortlessly takes down a few goblins. He gathers the frightened survivors, arms them with whatever he can find, and leads them ahead to fight off the goblins who keep approaching. At first everything goes fine, but gradually people start to fatigue, and the stream of goblins doesn't stop. Soon the military arrives, and with their weaponry, Lee helps finish off the last creatures. At that moment, a system window appears in front of him, with a notification that the game is restarting. While Lee struggles to understand what it means, the portal lights again, and a giant orc steps out. Lee and the soldiers open fire, but the bullets are worthless. The orc is immune to guns. Then one of the survivors, who just moments ago was hiding in dread, leaps forward and knocks down the orc with a single swing of his axe, stating the weak area is the legs. Lee can't grasp what's occurring. How could this guy, who is shivering at the sight of a single goblin, suddenly become so strong and confident? Soon all the other survivors show the same shift, becoming seasoned monster slayers. But weirdly, the alterations affect everyone except our hero. Suddenly he receives a system notification that explains everything. Due to a system breakdown, his regression has failed. Everyone else has regressed from the future. They know everything about the beasts and have years of battle experience. At that moment, Lee realizes he's absolutely screwed. But before he can even analyze it, another notification pops. The system has given him a unique special skill as recompense. It is Butterfly Effect Level 1, granted because he has not regressed. Every action he does that influences the future will now give him bonus points. Lee stares at the words and understands. The butterfly effect means that the slightest action can unleash a storm on the opposite side of the earth. More orcs step out of the gap, and the gamers rush forward to fight. Lee fires while assessing the battle. With his new player status, he can now see each monster's name and level above its head. His bullets simply leave minor scorch marks, proving worthless against the orc's tough skin. Close combat weaponry function better, since the regressors already know their weak points. Realizing this, he returns the rifle and picks up an axe. The algorithm rewards him with an additional point, illustrating that his new decisions impact the future. When an orc charges, he throws the axe at its knee and finishes it off with a clean strike. Kim watches and explains that in the past, he had used a chainsaw instead of an axe. Lee smiles, recognizing that every different choice generates a new future. Kim then tells him he once killed 3 orcs using thinner. Lee recalls it as a flammable chemical and decides to try it. The butterfly effect happens again, awarding him extra points. He pours thinner on the orcs, sets them ablaze, and watches flames destroy them. The system awards multiple bonus points, and confidence increases within him. A message appears announcing his daring rookie achievement and granting a new talent called armor. A green aura forms around his body, stunning everyone nearby. Kim curses in despair, while another player complains that Lee constantly acquires this power. Lee thinks this must be the same skill he had earlier, since the butterfly effect did not activate. As the rift begins to rumble again, everyone looks toward it, bracing for what happens next. Lee stands before the fissure as a system window displays, dubbing it the Goblin and Orc Dungeon with a D- difficulty. He studies the screen and concludes this game looks designed to wipe off civilization. Each dungeon includes a predetermined amount of monsters that eventually stream out through gates, and closing a gate is the only way to stop them. He turns to the players and begs them to clear the dungeon swiftly. He remembers that difficulty impacts prizes and skill grades, but his purpose is not loot. He wants to test his new armor talent and the stats earned by the butterfly effect. With 15 bonus points in hand, he puts them all into strength, improving it from 1 to 16. Confident in his experience with goblins and orcs, he enters the gate. The players follow, with Kim close following, wondering if Lee had conquered this region in his prior life. Inside, a goblin emerges from the shadows and bites Lee's arm. Armor activates quickly, deflecting the attack. He crushes the goblin's head with one hand and receives another bonus point. The others gaze in disbelief as his strength develops significantly within few hours. A female player calls it impossible, and Kim mutters that armor must be why Lee was once Korea's strongest player. When Lee dismisses his remarks, Envy overtakes Kim. He grabs a chainsaw and attacks, but the blade cannot breach the brilliant armor. Lee smiles maliciously, smashes the chainsaw, and holds Kim's neck. As Kim gasps in dread, Lee recalls the truth of the battlefield. Greed inevitably ends in destruction. He discovers these regressors. Imagine they could steal what he once possessed. Fixing his gaze on the remainder, he cautions them to stay back. Then he twists Kim's neck and lets the body fall. A heavy stillness follows. Lee tells himself that the world's old laws no longer matter. The game has begun, and mercy only leads to weakness. He addresses the terrified players and advises them to leave if they value their lives. Lee looks down at Kim's corpse and understands how horrible this game truly is. An inventory window floats above the body, offering his stuff to others. He mutters about its convenience and grabs the Goblin Champion's necklace, observing that it now has a new owner. The algorithm rewards him with bonus points for influencing the future. The necklace dramatically improves his strength and agility, giving him the same power as leveling up twice. It may lose value eventually, but for now it is useful. When a player mocks its appearance, Lee ignores the remark and picks up the shattered chainsaw to cut down remaining goblins. Even if the boost is little, every ounce of power counts. A notification arrives, announcing that all creatures are killed and the dungeon will collapse in 3 minutes. He recalls that a gate closes only when all creatures inside are slain. Those that fail to flee vanish with it, which explains the short escape timer. By the gate, he recognizes the youngster who had earlier cried at his father. Lee asks if he wishes to die here. The youngster insists on sticking with him. Lee instructs him to leave, but the youngster continues to beg. Frustrated, Lee scolds him again and awards his 9 remaining bonus points to strength, boosting it to 25, 28 with the necklace. The boy then reveals that they regressed 10 years into the past. He claims his life will not change, even after those 10 years. Thus he aspires to be a hero just once. He asks to accompany Lee, calling himself Kim Min-soo. His remarks and knowledge of future events attract Lee's interest. Min-soo reveals that he faced monsters and dragons for 10 years, and now aspires to serve the hero of Korea. Lee finds him engaging and accepts his loyalty. As they leave the gate, Lee wonders if becoming a sidekick is Min-soo's only objective. Min-soo says that he wants to be second in command, calling Lee number 1. Lee invites him to prove it by listing 10 future players, comrades or rivals alike, warning that treason means death. Min-soo accepts, and they exchange contact data before separating. 3 days later, the globe continues to adjust to the regression. Many players stay silent, frightened of being considered insane, or hoping for a fresh life. But with everyone regressing, no one can stand out as the solitary primary figure. Media and online platforms fill with stories about the new world. Lee watches the news from his apartment. The presenter, Jung Moon-young, announces that the world has transformed into a game and introduces Lee Dong-guk, director of the Asia-Pacific division of the World Player Association. Jung wonders about the confusion around the regression. Dong-guk explains that it promotes humanity, as stronger players can protect others and restore order faster. Only those offering future information pose an issue. Jung then questions whether the regression is tied to the last dungeon, since participants regressed 3 hours after 21 people entered it. Lee listens and recalls that the final dungeon came 10 years later. 3 hours following its entrance, everyone regressed. Jung speculates that it may be the true conclusion of the game. As the show ends, Lee mutters about filthy bastards and remembers that he was once the strongest player. Lee listens to the news and suddenly realizes why the players at the hardware store hailed him hero. A bonus point comes, and he guesses it is for the bubble wrap on his window. In his prior life, he never bothered with such things. Now, even tiny actions seem to reward him. He wins points for drinking water and sitting on the couch. His total grows to 37, and the continuous ascent brightens his attitude. As he stares at the figures, ambition stirs in him. He wonders how he became Korea's strongest player earlier without the butterfly effect skill. He learned early that the weak must yield to the powerful, and this mentality pushed him to desire power through money in battle. Now, with a true route toward absolute strength, he senses that dream returning. The news countdown concludes, showing statues of Lee Hui-yoon, Park Moo-sung, and Choi Chul-sung, the heroes that entered the final dungeon. Seeing his own statue scares him. It is weird to be worshipped like that, only 3 days following regression. He remembers being the highest paid mercenary in his prior life, a weapon people bought for war. Back then, fame meant little to him, but now it feels different. The reporter reveals that all gamers regressed following the dungeon event, suggesting that something within caused it. Dong-guk adds that the three heroes have vanished, hiding to protect their rare skills and equipment. Young queries if this is real, and Dong-guk confirms it. Then he mentions a new rule. The heroes who entered the final dungeon are now forgiven for any transgressions. Lee flicks off the TV before hearing more. Two things become evident to him. Many are hunting him, and he may now legally fight back. He puts on his jacket and steps outdoors. Running through the streets, he learns he never came to Gwanghwamun Square in his prior life. Each step demonstrates the future is already changing. He spends his extra points on agility, boosting it to 52. While running, he reflects on how others focus on strength or mana. For him, the conventional path no longer applies. His bonus points develop faster than anyone else's, making him an outlier. He reaches the busy square. Wearing a sweatshirt and mask, he mutters that this is absurd. If anyone knew who he was, chaos would break out. He scans the throng and senses secret weapons in their stockpiles. Everyone wants to look strong. Fame has made footballers into idols, but also become prey. He glances at the statues again. People previously prayed before them like devotees before gods. Now, the area is empty. His eyes stop on his own statue, marked with the title, Shadow of Death. Suddenly, a player named Kim Chang-bae appears and smashes the statue's head with a mace. A system message arrives, offering Lee bonus points for influencing the future. Chang-bae lands close and hides his weapon, ignorant of who is before him. Chang-bae smashes the statue and starts to run. Lee follows, but with his agility beyond 50, his moves feel difficult to control. After a short chase, he catches Chang-bae and clutches his neck. He slips off his disguise, and the dread in Chang-bae's eyes betrays recognition. Lee demands to know where he was heading. Chang-bae tries to grab for his mace, but Lee seizes his hand and takes it. The weapon previously belonged to an AWP champion and carries a chance to stun, enhancing attack and strength. Lee queries how Chang-bae obtained such a rare weapon in just 5 days. Convinced he must belong to a guild, Lee tightens his grasp and reminds him of his immunity to crimes. Chang-bae gasps for air and begs to be released. Lee requests his name and guild. Trembling, Chang-bae acknowledges he is from the General Guild. Lee orders him to continue. When Lee brings up Project Lee Hua-yun, Chang-bae discloses that it is a plot by the guild to collect all the talents and items Lee once had. After some hesitation, he acknowledges the first target is the stealth skill. It lies in the Lichen Dungeon, which will open in 3 days. He adds that 100 gamers will wait there, knowing that Lee will return for it. Lee realizes those athletes must be regressors. Later, Lee meets Min-soo and tells what he learned. Min-soo distrusts Chang-bae and seeks permission to kill him, but Lee refuses. Min-soo insists the guild will act sooner, while Chang-bae claims it will happen tomorrow. Lee knows one of them is lying. Their debate develops until Lee takes them by the neck and demands proof. Min-soo presents his phone with an article claiming that Lee will be at the Lichen Dungeon on the 7th of January, tomorrow. He tells that the dungeon arrived early in the game and that lichens are far stronger than goblins or orcs. They move in packs, and no one cleared the dungeon before. When they escaped, they ruined cities and killed people. Lee now knows why the dungeon became infamous. It wreaked huge destruction, and people feared it more than any other. Min-soo reminds him that he was the one who damaged it in the past. Lee turns to Chang-bae, demanding to know who ordered him to demolish the statue. Chang-bae snaps and reaches into his inventory. Lee reacts first and breaks his neck. A message emerges, offering a bonus point. Lee understands he must have spared Chang-bae in his prior existence. The world is changing faster now, due of the regressors. He turns to Min-soo and discusses discovering a means to kill lichens, perhaps via poison. Min-soo questions why he is asking about stuff he should already know. Lee cuts him off and reveals he never regressed, urging him to keep it secret. Min-soo is astonished and argues that such knowledge means nothing without power. Lichens are level 5 enemies, and lower-level players cannot enter. Lee nods, realizing he must reach level 5 shortly. Lee is only level 2, but knows levels mean little. With 80 stat points and 162 bonus points, his total reaches 242. By his estimate, he He matches a level 80 player. Still, Minsu cautions him that even with such might, he cannot face the lichens yet, and his low level hinders dungeon admission. Lee begs Minsu to take him somewhere to level up. Minsu reveals that only goblin and orc dungeons exist for now, since new gates open slowly, and the lichen gate appears tomorrow. Most gamers avoid the weaker dungeons, thinking them a waste of time. Lee calls those monsters cuties, and utilizes his extra points to improve strength to 187, increasing his armor skill with it. They arrive at a goblin and orc dungeon. A goblin tosses stones, but Lee runs rapidly and kills 2 with ease. His speed and strength leave no space for resistance. While fighting, he asks Minsu about skill stones. Minsu tells that they rest near a monster's heart, and their hue signifies class. White for common, purple for rare, yellow for unique, and red for legendary. The stealth talent from the lichen dungeon belongs to the rare class, hence its stone glows purple. Lee asks about the meaning of these classes. Minsu tells him that rare and below can appear several times, but unique and legendary exist just once. Skills can also level up, enhancing their effect. When Lee asks about exceptional skills, Minsu claims he has never heard of them, and Lee drops the topic. The next day, Lee reaches level 5. He and Minsu stand at the spot where the lichen gate will soon rise. A crowd already gathers. Lee instructs Minsu to observe, while he does the rest alone. Ahead, roughly 100 members from the general guild wait. Only 5 can enter the dungeon, and Lee must be among them. A man steps forward and announces that this is where Lee Huayun earned the stealth skill in the past. He vows the general guild will grab it this time. The audience cheers, certain of victory. 5 minutes later, the countdown begins. When it ends, the gate opens. Lee bursts forward before anyone can respond. Players shout and try to block him, but none can match his pace. He reaches the gate first and enters, followed by 4 others. The system announces the dungeon is full. Outside, Minsu watches in wonder, understanding Lee has already eclipsed what any regressor could achieve in just 5 days. As soon as they noticed Lee, one of the players shouted to prepare. 3 brought out goblin chef whips to confine his hands and neck, while the 4th placed a net over him. Their plan was clear. They understood they could not vanquish him and tried to trap him instead. Lee activated his armor skill and effortlessly turned the situation around, tying them instead. As they fought under the net, lichens raced in with fierce growls. Lee wondered whether fury was part of their character. The besieged players begged for mercy, acknowledging they were merely following orders. Before they could say further, the lichens attacked. But Lee smashed the animals without difficulty. He noted that wolves and dogs have the same weak place, the muzzle. Years ago, a detection dog had bitten him during a mission, and he subdued it by grasping its snout. Remembering it, he seized the lichens by their muzzles and smashed them. The beast slumped, unable to move. When the gamers wondered why he did not end them, Lee answered that killing all monsters would collapse the dungeon and close the gate. He wanted to find the lichen with the skill stone first, and then slip away discreetly before anyone outside noticed. When the lichens rose again, Lee growled that this was not enough and fractured their bones completely. Then he turned back to the trapped players and demanded the identity of their leader. Trembling, they revealed it was Choi Chul-sung. Lee recalls the name inscribed beside his own statue and wonders if Choi asked them to come for the stealth skill. They accept it, stating they merely followed orders, while one accuses another of betrayal. Lee snatches the one who shouted and breaks his shoulder, telling them he is not here to play games. He recognizes Choi Chul-sung, the general guild head, who once fought beside him in the final dungeon. Though never a close comrade, Choi was nonetheless part of his team. Now that same individual has turned on him, but Lee feels no betrayal, understanding the world operates on self-interest. As additional lichens develop, Lee finds that as some die, new ones spawn to keep their number fixed. This dungeon permits 25 at a time, which advantages him. He takes the net from the tied players and mutters that Chul-sung should understand why his men must die, then throws them toward the charging lichens. The dungeon admits only 5 people at once, thus when one group dies, others can enter. Soon new gamers enter and find the severed heads of their comrades. Rage propels them forward, but Lee overcomes them quickly and binds them as well. When he demands to know which lichen bears the skill stone, one confesses it is the one with white eyebrows. Their immediate cooperation reveals how terror has broken them. Lee searches and finds the wounded lichen. He tears it open with his own hands, blood and flesh scattering around. Disgusted, He thinks that Min-soo should handle similar work in the future. Inside, he finds the stone holding the stealth skill. The convicts murmur that it is the same skill used by a hero in the final dungeon, and regret losing the chance to claim it. Lee considers selling the stone for wealth, but decides otherwise. Since the game began, power has stood above all. He remembers his orphaned youth and the wars he survived. True power now rests within his reach, and he will seize it to forge a new history. He swallows the stone, but a message states that the skill is locked until level 10. Frustration builds, as his current level is 6. Determined, he resolves to grow stronger. He utilizes his 102 bonus points to boost strength, raising it to 289. Knowing the guild soldiers wait outside, he believes a direct combat would be risky. To stay safe, he saves one lichen so the dungeon remains open. More will spawn, enabling him train further. With his tremendous power, even a level 5 lichen provides little problem. He focuses on restraining his power to prevent killing them too rapidly. After persistent combat, he reaches level 10. The stealth talent unlocks, and he utilizes it, turning his hand transparent while his clothes stay visible. The athletes say that at higher levels, even garments vanish. Lee checks his skills and sees progress levels beside each. When they confirm that full invisibility starts at level 2, he removes his garments and activates the talent again. He knows these players came for the same skill he previously possessed in his past existence. If they had succeeded, they would have killed him for it. As he prepares to go, lichens close in around the tethered players, who cry for mercy. Lee asks them to keep silent and goes away without looking back. Outside the gate, the mob notices it has opened again. They whisper, wondering who perished and who will go next. At the same time, Lee steps out unobserved under stealth. Watching the restless folks, he mutters that the view is worth seeing. Then he finds Min-soo, taps his shoulder, and tells him to be quiet before pointing toward a taxi for them to take. Later, while scanning through the news, Lee hears accounts about his return and the lichen dungeon incident. The headlines describe his hunting approach alarming and display the bodies of 8 general guild members murdered by lichens. Min-soo shows him a live feed where anchors discuss Lee's appearance. One recounts his calm assurance before the final dungeon in their previous existence, when he lifted his middle finger to reporters and became a symbol of defiance. They now debate if his fame comes exclusively from that approach or something else. The debate switches when Park Jong-sik, chairman of the Player Skills and Technology Association, joins the show. He argues that the instant Lee came in the lichen dungeon, the game practically finished. His statement creates controversy, and even Lee is astonished. Anchors accuse Jong-sik of sowing confusion, but he maintains resolute. He explains that his team analyzed the lichen bodies and discovered each skull caved in by a single hit. Given the toughness of lichen bones, such power could only come from a level 40 player with all points in strength. When asked if special equipment could explain it, Jong-sik dismisses it, saying no known item could produce that sort of harm. Holding out a fungus head, he points at the wound and alleges Lee Hwayun crushed their heads with a flick of his finger. Some anchors joke, others demand his resignation. Lee notes that individuals disputing Jong-sik's words are people with wealth and influence, guilds, associations, and industries earning from the game. They fear the truth will ruin morale and harm profitability. Jong-sik closes by adding that if the game reaches its final level again, Lee will undoubtedly be among those who finish it. The anchors ignore his assertion, however one playfully relates Lee's earlier gesture to his current authority. Lee mutters in surprise and queries how she got an anchor. He reflects that his path today differs from his past existence. Only his strength remains the same. He recognizes that without greater levels, stats alone are pointless. He could not access the lichen dungeon or employ stealth properly at first because of level constraints. To grow stronger, he needs more experience. Determined, Lee begins searching lichens in another dungeon. What once seemed fulfilling now feels dull. He mutters that he is weary of them and wants something new. Min-soo advises that this is still the best hunting ground, but Lee wonders about the next dungeon. Min-soo mentions the level 14 Blue Monkey dungeon, albeit no player can enter it yet, as only 5 days have elapsed. Lee sees an opportunity. If no one can enter, then the Blue Monkeys will emerge on their own. Min-soo recalls how dangerous they were in their prior existence. Lee recognizes it can be hazardous, but stays confident. With bonus points comparable to what others would get at over 100 levels, He believes that in front of true strength, no monster matters. Those who never awakened as players did not regress. However, they already know the blue monkeys will soon emerge and destroy everything. 6 days after the game began, no one is powerful enough to fight such monsters. Lee and Minsu walk into an underground parking lot. The silence feels thick. Minsu confesses he has only seen blue monkeys on the news, but knows how terrible they are. They stand above level 10, can attack from afar, and can impersonate people. A car horn suddenly rings in the distance, and Minsu assumes the monsters are toying with it. Lee notes that they had already escaped the gate. He opens his status window and moves all 251 extra points into agility, boosting it to 578. In a blur, he vanishes toward the beasts. Minsu stares in disbelief, knowing that even one hit from a blue monkey may kill him. Lee cuts through the demons with ease. Their attempt to retreat fails as the regulations bar them from re-entering the dungeon. He sees fear in their eyes, the same fear humans express when death is nigh. Minsu thinks it weird that creatures once dreaded by humanity now flee in fright. Grinning, Lee pursues them down, knowing that constant leveling is the only way to stay in the game. Without it, he will lose access to dungeons and skills. When he checks again, he has attained level 17 with 202 bonus points. Minsu is shocked that he gained so much in 6 days, but Lee feels fatigue seeping in. His limited stamina cannot balance his speed and strength anymore. He adds all points into stamina, boosting it to 213, and resumes the fight. The blue monkeys toss debris at him, but nothing slows him down. When the last one falls, Minsu stares in awe, realizing that if anyone witnessed this, they would lose their wits. Lee then remembers the security cameras filming everything. Standing near the gate, Minsu advises destroying it. He explains that if it continues open, more monsters will spawn, making it a farming area that keeps stronger ones from arriving. Lee agrees the blue monkeys are now too feeble to provide him significant growth. He merely came since no higher dungeon exists yet. Minsu adds that clearing dungeons opens stronger ones, and mankind never permits weaker gates to stay. Lee asks if this means defeating more dungeons will merely make life worse for others. Minsu agrees, pointing out that Lee just cleared a level 14 gate in 6 days, something that took nearly a month in their former lives. When Lee wonders how he knows, Minsu shows him an app where players post dungeon records and strategies. The first clear time becomes official, and top players win national recognition. Hearing this, Lee decides to post their record under the name Fearless, a term that denotes without fear. Minsu accepts and uploads it. Soon, the forums explode with excitement and worry about the advent of level 15 dungeons. Meanwhile, inside a nearby shelter, residents watch the transmission. A tiny child asks her mother when they may go home. The woman claims it will take 29 days. Then a man shouts that the dungeon has been emptied. People declare him a liar until the screens light up with images of Lee fighting the blue monkeys. Cheers fill the hall as they realize it is true. On the player site, everyone discovers the new name Fearless. No one knows who he is, but it doesn't matter. To the people watching, a new hero has appeared. Lee and his pal travel along the road, recalling the events of their past lives. His friend recalls that the level 15 dungeon was cleared 41 days after the game began, but it happened in Japan, where the crimson-eyed horse appeared. Korea too had a level 15 gate, although no one was strong enough to clear it. When Lee asks about their next monster, his pal tells it is a level 15 enormous bear. He says that monsters below level 20 are not threatening since they lack skills. However, higher levels take longer to vanquish. He remembers that 71 days once transpired between the clearing of the level 19 and level 20 dungeons. As they continue walking, his friend wonders if 300 kilometers is too far. Lee adds that each step offers him bonus points, thus walking itself is beneficial. This makes his pal consider that even modest actions can alter the future. Dropping a pen or avoiding a bug might influence what would have happened. So Lee walks carefully, conscious that every choice impacts his path. A truck suddenly honks behind them. The driver yells and curses, urging them to move aside. Lee answers quietly, but the man starts shouting and speeds up. Anger rushes across Lee's face, and before his companion can stop him, Lee departs. He catches up to the vehicle, confronting the driver, and warns him to control his temper if he wants to live. The motorist apologizes swiftly, and Lee lets it go, choosing peace over wrath. As they resume their trek, Lee realizes the dungeons are opening faster than previously. This gives him a chance to deepen the distance between himself and others. Those with memories of the past are losing their edge, while he continues to grow stronger on his own. The scene transitions to the battle within the level 15 dungeon. A big bear towers over Lee. He knows that once level 20 monsters come, they will start using skills, so he must grow stronger quickly. The bear attacks hard, driving him back, but he dodges and climbs its arm. With a surge of strength, he crushes its neck and watches it collapse. More animals rush in, but he defeats them all. Meanwhile, disputes spread online about who cleared the level 14 dungeon. Some think it was Lee Huiyun. Others say Park Mu-sung. His companion reports that a level 16 dungeon has previously been cleared by Poison Choi, whose real name is Choi Chol-sung. He was once one of the men who entered the ultimate dungeon with Lee. Lee muses that Choi must have obtained a remarkable skill from his prior life. His acquaintance recalls that Choi was the Poison King and commander of the strongest guild in Korea, the General Guild. Lee remembers how Choi once tried to steal his stealth skill and determines he must move quicker. When Lee asks about Choi's weapon, his companion recalls a black dagger previously belonging to the Golden Leopard, a level 20 monster from Korea. Lee dismisses the memory, focused exclusively on his own progress. His friend updates him that the level 17 and 18 dungeons have been cleared on January 9th and 10th. As they depart another dungeon, Lee asks about the upcoming ones. The level 19 dungeon lies near Gangnam Station, and the level 21 dungeon will open at Yeodong Park in Bundang. Lee notes it would take roughly 30 minutes to go there without traffic. His companion feels happy because the location has less people, but Lee tells him that even if throngs appear, no one can enter. Only he can claim the weapon again. Now at level 21, Lee holds 744 bonus points. He directs all of them into strength, raising it to 1,033. A system notification emerges, reporting that his strength has crossed 1,000 for the first time. He obtains a new title, King of Strength, and gains the Petrify skill, which freezes an opponent for 3 seconds. Testing the technique on his pal proves its power. His companion compares Lee's strength to that of Yang Xiongwei, the Emperor of China, who formerly led all players there and cleared many dungeons. Lee asks if his new skill is the same as the Emperor's, and his companion confirms it. Lee then asks his friend to go to Yeodong Park and monitor who gathers there. Meanwhile, he will clear the level 19 dungeon at Gangnam Station. Min-soo accepts and vows to call him if anything unexpected happens. With that, they part ways, each moving toward their next assignment. Lee waits before the level 19 date, knowing he must clear it to enter the level 20 Golden Leopard dungeon. The place is packed with crimson-eyed moles. He recalls that the level 20 gate will open if any level 19 dungeon is cleared, but as no one else seems capable, he decides to take on the task himself. Soldiers surround the area, overseeing the evacuation. One of them stops Lee and demands for identification. Lee acknowledges he has none. A mole suddenly breaks out of the earth, and the troops fire, but their bullets do nothing. The soldier begs him to flee, but Lee calmly explains that guns cannot kill such monsters. When asked if he is a player, he nods. Another mole surfaces behind them. Lee activates his Petrify skill, freezing it aloft, then crushes its neck. Seeing this, the soldier stands aside and lets him through. Inside, Lee studies the dungeon. The moles are not only tough but smart, hiding deep down. Knowing he cannot dig them out, he takes the blue monkey's fur from his inventory. Burning it creates toxic smoke that lures monsters. The vapors spread through the burrows, causing the moles to surface. Lee catches each one and kills them effortlessly. Soon, all 15 lie dead. A system message emerges proclaiming the dungeon's clearance, and the gates crumble in 3 minutes. His phone rings. Min-soo warns that reporters have encircled the Golden Leopard dungeon. Lee orders him to drive them away and claims he will arrive soon. Min-soo considers it unusual that the General Guild has not shown up, despite knowing about Lee's stealth talent. Lee decides they are avoiding him because they know crossing paths with him brings death. Lee leaves the soldiers behind and drives to Yeodong Park. When he comes, the venue is crowded. Annoyed, he contacts Min-soo, reminding him he was supposed to clear the area. Min-soo explains he tried, but no one listened. Lee steps out, determined to handle it himself. As soon as the media discover him, they rush forward chanting his name. Questions fly from every direction. Some criticize him for reducing player morale, others accuse him of causing havoc with his rapid dungeon clears. Some even beg for autographs and photos. The cacophony grinds on him. After years of conflict, he has learnt to respect silence. He peers at the gathering and states that weakness is not a fault, but blaming others for it is. Those who do should rot in hell. His strong comments silence the crowd for a moment. Then one reporter brings up Boward, a Canadian player who once entered the final dungeon. Boward has suggested Lee is strong today, but will be the weakest among high-level players eventually. Lee wonders which channel has the highest ratings. When they point to one reporter, he turns toward the camera, raises his middle finger, and delivers his answer to Boward. Lee goes into the Golden Leopard dungeon, where 7 golden leopards prowl. The dungeon permits only 2 players and carries a B+ difficulty, known for granting rare goods. He recalls that hunting these animals normally takes 2 strong players, and B+ dungeons are seldom easy. One leopard roars and stuns him. He expected this, knowing the roar prohibits him from using talents for a moment. Without his abilities, he must fight differently. When another leopard charges, he evades its claws, mindful that even a scratch may be lethal. He activates his stealth, going unobserved through the battlefield. From the shadows he strikes rapidly, concentrating on speed and precision rather than protection. Realizing that grappling is his only option, he seizes a leopard and slams it to the ground. The conflict carries on, yet he perseveres. Finally, all 7 animals fall. A system message declares the dungeon cleared, and he examines his inventory. Inside lies a dagger titled the Dagger of Destruction. Its description claims it channels the energy of its wielder's skills. Lee equips it, noticing that it has no fixed stats, yet exudes great power. Activating armor, he sees the dagger gain the same skill. When he turns invisible, the blade disappears with him. Its strength develops with his own, just as it did in his prior existence. Satisfied, he prepares to depart as the gate begins to crumble. Outside, a mob of reporters swarms him again. They yell his name and bombard him with questions about Fearless, the dungeon, and his sword. Their noise annoys him. He notices Minsu nearby, apologizing for failing to clear the area. Lee understands. His pal lacks the influence to stop them. He notices something weird. No players have appeared. Normally, many would rush here to steal his loot or skills, yet none have come. The concept unsettles him. Then a reporter rings out, asking when he will obtain the special skill Eye of the God. Lee freezes, bewildered, as he had never heard of it. His friend signals him after hearing the name Eye of the God, reminding Lee that it was once his skill. Reporters close in, asking to know his stats and level. Lee says calmly that he is level 24, with a strength of 1033. Silence falls. He declares that he is outside the law, and warns that if anyone bothers him again, he would murder them. The next day, mayhem spreads globally. Newspapers splash headlines declaring him the birth of a god and parody boards' earlier comments. Others indicate that the Golden Leopard dungeon was cleared in less than 40 minutes. Governments express worry, and North Korea brands him a global menace. Every site writes on his refusal to give interviews and his threat toward the media. Later, Lee and Minsu sit in his living room. Lee wonders about the Eye of the God. Minsu confirms its existence, saying Lee possessed it in his prior life. It allowed him to observe opponents' stats and inventory, making it a unique and unparalleled skill. As it leveled up, it evolved through a process termed a Second Awakening, altering not only in power, but in form. Minsu speculates that at higher levels, the skill may detect even minor movements in an enemy's pupils or heartbeat, allowing Lee perfect precision in fighting. Lee asks where it might be located, and Minsu advises checking the player website, which keeps dungeon records. Though not flawless, it could narrow the search. Lee realizes time is short. Many players have regressed and will scramble to claim the talent. Large guilds and low-level players alike will hunt for it. Minsu tells him that he was one of the strongest players in his prior life, and that people talk about him regularly. Rumors of Project Li Huayun spread swiftly, and major guilds have begun researching records of those who entered the final dungeon. Lee asks if these documents were prepared because they foresee regression, but Minsu clarifies that they were made for murder. Guilds tracked every powerful player, noting where they earned their equipment and skills. That knowledge helped them to plot thefts and assassinations. The General Guild once tried to take Lee's stealth abilities, using whips and nets, after realizing he wore armor. Even after failing, they monitored him closely, looking for another chance. Lee realizes these documents are treasure maps going right to his prior power. Minsu acknowledges that his own guild once collected similar data too. Skills and things were everything in this world, and murdering became a natural aspect of living. By tracking dungeon gates, guilds might anticipate exactly when someone achieved a new skill. Lee considers that the General Guild, led by the Poison King Choi Chol-sung, is the most powerful in Korea and one of his old adversaries. They already know his former skills and may now be hunting something bigger, the Eye of the God. Minsu says they may be exploiting their memories of the past to manufacture formidable weapons early. Lee agrees but adds that they likely avoided the Golden Leopard dungeon for two reasons. First, they aim to let him recover his old talents and items, then kill him to take them all at once. Second, fear. His strength has already intimidated them enough that none dare to meet him again. Lee examines the game website and discovers that the level 21 Black Orc dungeon has been cleared by the ID Poison Choi. He notes that Choi is working hard. Earlier, players from the United States and China were on the leaderboard, but from level 20 onward, just his and Choi Chil-sung's names remain. He is now level 25 with 732 bonus points, which he gives to concentration. Raising it to 733, he reflects that no one can yet become emperor since that title demands a stat exceeding 1,000. When his power surpassed that mark, he acquired the title King of Power and obtained the talent Petrify, originally owned by Emperor Yongsun-hui in his past life. Since only a level 21 dungeon has been cleared so far, no one could possibly reach that power yet. His companion agrees with his decision, stressing that concentration is key. Lee explains that it boosts combat awareness, evasion, and precision, helping him employ his strength to its utmost. It also helps when skills are unusable. When questioned if he needs more mana, he says that he never runs out since he regulates it efficiently. Lee decides to enhance his stealth talent next. His companion argues physical force could be faster, but Lee adds that stealth delivers knowledge through espionage and penetration, making it more beneficial. He plans to improve it to level 2 before visiting the General Guild headquarters. As they step outdoors, his friend comments on his basic clothes and advises he should dress to match his growing influence. Though reluctant, Lee agrees and accompanies him to a store famed for dungeon player clothes. The shopkeeper, recognizing Lee, offers the garments as a gift in his honor. Amused by the gesture, Lee agrees and leaves after changing into his new outfit. He then asks how to raise stealth. His friend argues that proficiency comes from knowing and frequently utilizing the skill. Certain acts increase proficiency points, which trigger system messages. Lee assumes that other regressed players already know these ways and decides to begin experimenting. They enter a goblin and orc dungeon. Goblins pose no threat, so Lee focuses on orcs. He activates stealth as one roars nearby, testing alternative tactics. When he tries combining armor with stealth, it fails, so he switches back and strikes the orc's neck, obtaining proficiency. Realizing the strategy works, he continues hunting until stealth reaches level 2. Now anything touching his skin can become transparent depending on his mana. Satisfied, Lee asks about the overall guild headquarters. His acquaintance informs him it is in Cheongdam, Gangnam District. Lee smiles, saying that it must be an affluent place. Lee stands outside the General Guild headquarters with his stealth skill engaged. 2 guild players walk ahead of him, grumbling about the trouble produced by Lee Hwa-yoon. One mutters that they merely pretend to help while collecting money, while the other warns him to be quiet. As they swipe their cards, the guard greets them, and Lee slips in behind. One player pauses, detecting something unusual but dismisses it. Lee considers it a tight call and listens as an announcement calls all CEOs to a 9:30 meeting. He decides to follow. Inside the conference room, he maintains stealth active. A man opens the meeting, stating the date as January 14th. An A-rank player reports that the guild master is missing, clearing a level 23 dungeon. Another is worried about his condition. A B-rank player announces that their master will soon claim the Eye of God, and Lee remembers the words carefully. They discuss monitoring Lee Hwa-yoon, claiming that his name dominates every meeting and that they cannot find him. Vice Master Choi Han-sung adds that if they cannot locate him, arresting him is hopeless. Lee smiles inwardly, knowing he is right there. Han-sung adds that losing the stealth talent, the dagger, and now the Eye of God, would destroy them. The man leading the meeting promises Lee will appear for the Eye of God. An executive objects, stating Lee's power has expanded beyond belief. He waves a newspaper reporting Lee's strength of 1033, calling it impossible. Han Sung rejects it as a ruse aimed to instill anxiety and asks for the strategy. The man presents records outlining Lee's prior acts, revealing that he claimed the Eye of God in the level 34 Black Ogre dungeon, killing 4 guild members. He asks those who died to raise their hands, and Han Woo-sung, Lee Yoo-jin, Park Gwang-ho, and Go Sang-yoon answer. Lee calmly studies them, recalling their fates. Yoo-jin tells that the dungeon always houses a rare skill and that their master sent them there years ago. They had discounted Lee as a weak player, and that mistake led to their deaths. Fear evident in their voices as they remember. Park admits he still shakes at the memory. Yoo-jin says that the unique skill Eye of God always appears in that dungeon, and that their knowledge now includes details obtained after regression. Lee reads at the records, noting the dungeon's location and the monster's weaknesses. Han Sung asks for their plan. Yoo-jin adds that their lord would go himself this time, and since only they and Lee know the dungeon well, they will take the chance to kill him and retrieve the Eye of God. He proposes using SA2 on the Black Ogres. Another player argues, informing him that the substance is forbidden. Yoo-jin insists there is no other way to stop Lee. Park says that they will support their lord and return with the eye. Listening from the shadows, Lee softly wonders if they are ready to die the same manner again. Human inventiveness knows no limitations. Even when monsters menace the earth, mankind analyze their remnants to build instruments for survival. Monster materials are unlike anything found on earth. Others are harder than iron yet light. Others burn better than coal, while some are carved into complicated shapes. These discoveries advance human technology, though not necessarily for good. One such creation is the medication SA2. Lee messages his friend to ask about the substance. His pal is horrified and tells that it is outlawed by the World Player Association. When Lee questions about its use, his pal reveals that it amplifies a monster's power. A test once rendered a goblin strong enough to defeat a level 20 golden leopard. The drug was originally designed as a weapon to unleash monsters in enemy territory. However, it caused pandemonium, resulting to soldiers and players succumbing to weaker beasts. In the guild meeting, Lee Yoo-jin informs that SA2 lasts 24 hours. When Lee Hui-yun comes at the Black Ogre gate, they plan to inject the medicine into the monsters, enhancing their power to level 100. After slaying him, they will seize his abilities, items, and more, and the Eye of God. Han Sung approves, but tells everyone to keep silent or the guild would collapse if the truth spreads. He stresses that the Eye of God is too vital and pushes everyone to grow stronger before facing the level 33 Black Ogres. Yoo-jin agrees and thanks them for their support. Suddenly, Lee receives a system warning that his stealth would deactivate soon owing to low mana. He laments not investing more points earlier and swiftly transfers all 243 bonus points to mana, raising it to 341. Yoo-jin detects the rapid shift in questions, who just utilized a skill. Gwang-ho denies it, but Yoo-jin insists he sensed a significant flow of mana. Before mistrust spreads further, someone comes to announce the guild master's arrival. Choi Chol-sung steps in, and the room grows hostile. Lee feels the strength pouring from him. Chol-sung tells everyone there is no need for alarm. Han Sung mentions SA2, claiming that is their only opportunity to fight Wei-yun, whose strength appears unachievable. Chol-sung says that Wei-yun does not lie, however his strength is absolutely amazing. He then instructs everyone to move out. As Chol-sung passes, Lee considers confronting him, but decides to focus on the archives. He follows a man carrying documents, sliding through the entrance as the man examines his eye for admission. His high concentration keeps his actions silent. Inside, he shows himself, binds the man with blue monkey fur, and seizes the records from his prior life. He reads the papers under the flash of his lighter. The records are extensive, chronicling every combat and every player he once killed. Reading them creates a mild sense of sadness. He flips to the list of objects and skills, each related to the monsters they originated from, and finds the precision nearly admirable. Wei-yun's historical records suggest that after clearing the level 245 dungeon, his body transformed totally. His darker form grew unstable and destroyed everything in its path. The sight was beyond description. It became a legendary grade skill that players eventually titled Lee Wei-yun's Shadow, earning him the moniker Shadow of Death. After the world reset, this exact power now belongs to Choi Chol-sung, master of the General Guild. Reading the data, Lee understands this is the final entry concerning his history and future. He suspects it is simply a copy, and demands the original before destroying the archive. Shattering the supercomputer that contained all guild data, he wins a massive quantity of additional points, illustrating how much the guild's fall has upset the world's balance. The destruction of the archive itself influences the trajectory of the future. Knowing strength must come first, Lee spends all bonus points into his strength stat, bringing it to 2054. He texts his pal, indicating that they cannot foresee how much the SA2 medication will augment monsters. His guy adds that a strength of 2000 alone is impressive. When Lee asks what else he learned, his pal replies that the medication was originally created to maximize dungeon prizes. Humans assumed stronger monsters would make harder dungeons and greater drops, so they experimented by injecting monsters with the medication. However, the system never acknowledged the alteration, making the medicine unpredictable and deadly. Lee finds the medicine troubling and concerns about the general guild's plan to use it on black ogres. His friend proposes trying it first. They inject a goblin with the medication, and it roars with startling power before charging. Lee moves fast, grabs it by the skull, and crushes it, noting its quickness, but realizing its power is still far below his own. Lee encounters a level 27 dungeon full with teeth zombies. Their terrible stink makes it hard to focus. They move as swiftly as blue monkeys, and their iron jaws can crush everything. Even crushing their skulls or organs fails to stop them, so Lee thinks decapitation is the only way. Using subtlety, he slices through them one by one. The fight offers no experience, but he gains 456 bonus points. Though beneficial, it still feels lacking. As the last zombie falls, the system informs that all monsters are destroyed and the gate will collapse in 3 minutes. Another message appears, explaining that the mastery of his butterfly skill has improved and that his actions are drastically changing the future. Lee stops, wondering what the system genuinely means by those statements. Lee steps out of the gate and calls for his companion. He asks if any questions remain, saying that he does not need them due of regression. Each participant gets 3 questions from the system at the outset, and his pal discloses that he has used one to ask why regression happened, leaving 2. Lee proposes asking about skill comp. His companion hesitates, fearing it could be a waste, but eventually agrees. When he asks about the proficiency points for butterfly effect, the system says that no such skill exists. Shocked, he tells Lee that the system could not find it. He wonders if Lee possesses an ability beyond the game itself, something like a flaw or an unauthorized program. Before they can discuss further, a fresh dungeon gate appears. A notice announces that a level 1 special dungeon with S-rank difficulty has been unlocked, and only 1 player can enter. Lee receives a notification saying he has gained over 4,000 points through butterfly effect, which triggered the dungeon's emergence. He tells his friend to ask the system about it, but his friend refuses, frustrated that the last query was wasted. He complains about the game's inventor, arguing the system denies what clearly exists. Lee nods toward the gate, telling him that the system's denial means little when the proof sits before them. A notice displays that the gate will close in 30 seconds. They both wonder if it can close on its own. Lee steps forward, urging his pal to query the system about the gate, while he enters inside. The system reacts that special dungeons develop when a player or small group grows too powerful compared to others. These dungeons are built by the god of the game to restore balance. Clearing one grants a specific skill meant to counter an unstoppable player. His companion knows the gate appeared because of Lee, and that any player who clears it could obtain a talent strong enough to fight him. The machine argues it could not answer earlier since information concerning special dungeons was only added moments ago. Annoyed, his pal mutters that Lee is likely to grow even stronger. Inside the dungeon, Lee travels into a shadowy passage, thinking that a S-level dungeon should at least provide a unique talent. Suddenly, a goblin comes ahead, smiling ominously. To Lee's horror, the creature speaks, declaring itself the protector of the secret dungeon, and disclosing its level 200. It mocks his amazement, promises him a quick and painful death, then produces a burning orb of fire and hurls it toward him. Lee activates his armor as the fire hits him. The system notifies that the armor's proficiency has increased. He understands it grows stronger after sustaining attacks beyond its defense. The talent increases to level 2, earning the ability to release a shockwave. The goblin appears astonished at Lee's prowess and charges with another wave of fire. Lee utilizes his petrify skill, freezing the beast midair before slamming it into the ground. The goblin moans in disbelief, but when Lee grabs its head to crush it, the goblin blocks the strike. Lee is startled that its skull remains intact. Grinning, the goblin summons 3 clones. One clone appreciates Lee's power, while another wonders how he survived so long. They hurl energy blasts, but Lee dodges rapidly. When one clone approaches from behind, Lee blocks it and strikes back. His armor releases a shockwave, sending the goblin flying. The force amazes him. The goblin stares at the fallen clone in surprise, remarking that no human should be this strong. Lee charges again and destroys another clone. The last 2 retreat, but he does not stop. He notes their knowledge of human words while following them. Pouring all his extra points into strength, he increases it to 3,486. Lee comes in with overpowering power. One clone sobs that their deaths cannot be part of the bot's plan. Lee punches, obliterating him instantly. Fear fills the last goblin's eyes before Lee vanishes using stealth and pierces its neck with his dagger. He levels up, recognizing that is the outcome of slaying such a high-level enemy. A notification indicates that all monsters have been defeated, and the gate will close in 3 minutes. The level 200 Guardian has fallen, and a special skill has been bestowed to him. Excitement surges within as he awaits the payoff. Lee obtains the special talent Eye of the Reversal, which allows him to read another player's memories. However, it cannot read the memories of players stronger than him, and can only be utilized once per 24 hours. The skill has the capacity to close the knowledge gap between past and present players, who once relied on experience and memory to stay ahead. Stepping out of the gate, Lee sees his pal, who instantly asks if he obtained another particular skill. Instead of explaining, Lee decides to show and utilizes the skill on him. A system message appears, asking which memory to inspect. Lee selects the time they were in the grocery. The recollection develops before him like a scene, complete with options to pause and rewind. He skips forward to witness Minsu's father dying and the remorse that haunts his friend. Then he sees Minsu looking at him with admiration, believing Lee could alter the world and kill all monsters. Lee laughs at what he sees and repeats his friend's sentiments loudly, making Minsu flush. Declaring they will defeat every monster and dominate the planet, Lee peers again into his friend's head and catches him referring to him as "my king." He teases Minsu, who becomes agitated and asks him to stop. Lee laughs and decides to wait for the level 29 dungeon. Later, Lee sits in his apartment and posts an update to the game site, proclaiming the clean of the level 28 Golden Tooth Zombie dungeon. Reactions stream in. Some accuse him of unfairness, others praise him, and many worry about the harm caused by bigger creatures. A few doubt the last dungeon can ever be cleared, while others label him a god. Lee ignores the dispute and focuses on publishing his completion times, as the official rankings by the government and World Player Association depend on them. Reaching the top 10 would allow him immunity from laws and taxes, but his actual ambition remains the final dungeon, which promised power and fame beyond measure. Minsu returns with word that Choi Cholsung has cleared the nice poisonous spider dungeon, an achievement that appears unattainable without a new ability. Lee suspects Choi is chasing the Eye of God and expects their encounter at the Black Ogre dungeon. The scenario moves to a level 30 dungeon in South Korea, known as Dark Horn Hogs. Lee encounters a gigantic hog whose horns extend with every roar. One hit may kill him, but he also knows the horn's great significance. His mana is low since Eye of the Reversal absorbs significant energy. With 112 bonus points left, he devotes them entirely to mana, feeling renewed power as he sprints at the animals. The hogs charge toward Lee, and he activates his armor. Grabbing their horns, he pushes them into the ground. The horns refuse to shatter, which explains their high worth. He pins the creatures under his foot and pushes his knife into the ground. The hardened blade releases a shockwave, shocking him with its force. Realizing the consequence, he slices off their horns with ease, but feels disappointed at how little challenge they posed. Holding the Dark Horn hog horns, Lee acknowledges their importance as ingredients for legendary items. Since he already owns a formidable dagger, he aims to sell them for profit. The system then declares that all monsters are defeated, and the gate will close in 3 minutes. Back in his flat, Lee stares at his phone after publishing an update about clearing the level 30 dungeon. The rising attention bothers him. He wonders how many level 32 gates are open nearby. Minsu says that 2 exist in South Korea. Lee fears Cholsung might wait until the level 33 gate instead, planning to do the same. Minsu says it may turn into a game of strategy. If both men wait, the first to clear the level 32 gate will force the other to advance swiftly. Meanwhile, Choi Chul-sung stands before a gate with 4 players Lee had killed in his prior life. Guang-hoo questions the drug's usefulness against someone as powerful as Lee. Yu-jin thinks Lee's strength overstated, but Sang-hyun warns that Lee's abilities might be real. Chul-sung declares he has no intention of facing Lee directly. Even if Lee's strength hits 1,000, he feels the augmented ogres will overcome him. He says that the SA2 medication multiplies a monster's stats by 20 for 24 hours. Confident in his scheme, he chooses to let the ogres murder Lee and then collect his stuff afterward. As they enter the gate, a group of black ogres appears. Chul-sung grabs the pin from an SA2 smoke bomb and rolls it forward. The ogres inhale the medicine and fall under its effect. Watching them shift, Chul-sung smiles, hoping to wait until the medicine wears off before collecting Lee's remains. Then he and his team exit the dungeon. Lee enters at the gate with Min-soo and senses the eerie silence. He determines that the enemies had already utilized the medicine on the black ogres. Spotting footsteps, he wonders how the so-called top guild could be so irresponsible. Min-soo confirms the ogres are under the medicine's impact and proposes waiting for the drug to wear off, but Lee refuses. Since they already know the monster's position, changing plans could notify the adversary. He spends all his bonus points into stamina and instructs Min-soo to hide because the general guild has seen his face. Min-soo accepts and waits for Lee's call. Unseen, a surveillance bug from the guild records them. At the control room, the guild's operators track Lee's movements and fix the camera on the gate. They think he will not endure more than 3 hours. Their leader orders an immediate report to Chul-sung. Inside the dungeon, the stink drives Lee to shield his nose. Moving stealthily with his dagger poised, he feels the ground quiver as dark ogres approach, each grasping gigantic axes. They appear more hideous than before, and despite his subtlety, they sense him. Realizing their senses have enhanced due to the medication, he braces for war. An ogre hurls its axe, but Lee activates armor and dodges. He casts Petrify, slices the monster's leg, then slams his dagger into its back, till it falls motionless. Another ogre swings with immense force, and though Lee shields with armor, the blow sends him back. He realizes its might as more ogres surge forward. They throw their axes, but he evades with ease. Seeing their firearms dispersed, he observes they are useless now. Grabbing one of the axes, he tosses it at the chief ogre, cutting its neck. As the body collapses, the pack roars in wrath, and Lee readies another axe to confront them one by one. With his great strength, Lee snaps the ogre's arm, leaving it dangling uselessly. The creature roars in anguish and swings its other arm, but Lee dodges and smashes its leg. The beast collapses, and Lee stands over it, deciding not to kill it yet to keep the entrance open. Around him lie 9 lifeless ogres, yet the eye of God remains hidden. Thoughts of Choi Chul-sung and the general guild arise, and he determines to draw them within the dungeon. He tosses the ogres' heads out of the gate and steps outside, taunting the hiding watchers. Their plan, he argues, was neither creative nor effective, and urges them to come fast. Then he returns inside, preparing for their arrival. In the control room, the surveillance team watches in panic. The administrator contacts Chul-sung, explaining that Lee had thrown out the ogres' heads. Chul-sung realizes the situation and requests a poison strong enough to kill Lee. When told it is still in production, he orders the administrator's execution, proclaiming that all useless people will die from now on. He then tells the researchers to produce an enhancer that can pierce Lee's armor within 3 hours. In his office, Chul-sung destroys a poison enhancer in anger. The enhancer previously fueled his ascension in the previous timeline, when his poison skill won him the title of Poison King. By employing future technology, he could make toxins that pierced monsters' defenses. But even now, he lacks a poison strong enough to breach Lee's armor. Determined, he orders his 4 players to murder Lee within 2 hours. If captured, they must end their own lives to safeguard the plot. Guang-ho hesitates, but Chul-sung cautions that failure would not be forgiven and vows they will be hailed as heroes if they succeed. Back inside the dungeon, fresh black ogres emerge. One throws its axe, but Lee dodges easily. Slaying them simply leads more to appear, and he starts to find the struggle tedious. He punches one, killing it instantaneously, and decides to ignore the rest. Then a notice lights before him, announcing that the dungeon has surpassed its maximum number of players. Lee smirks, knowing that the General Guild has finally entered. Lee faces the General Guild players, and a cold passes through their spines. Yu-jin mutters in amazement, while Guang-ho reminds the party that just 2 hours left before Master Chulsung arrives with the new poison to murder Lee. Lee quietly watches how unprepared they look. Guangho notices something strange. Lee stands without a single wound. He urges everyone to prepare for fight, stating they only need to withstand 2 hours. Yujin tries to flee in panic, but Lee moves faster, closing the distance and cracking her neck. The others freeze, as Lee remarks that terminating her soon was mercy. Wusung instructs his crew to be calm, believing they can stall Lee long enough to become heroes in the guild's history. Lee steps forward, seizing Guangho by the neck, and activates the Eye of the Reversal. Peering into his memories, Lee sees Chulsung consuming a poison enhancer that enhances his poisons. Reversing the memories, he watches Chulsung's men propose utilizing enhancers from venomous spiders, capable of killing instantaneously. Lee demands details from Guangho, who resists until Lee tightens his grasp. Gasping for breath, Guangho explains that the liquid modifies Chulsung's poison to meet each creature. Lee finds the enhancement impressive. Continuing through the memories, Lee witnesses Chulsung directing his scientists to create a toxin strong enough to pierce his armor. Hearing Chulsung's anger at their delayed progress, Lee grins, recognizing his armor still cannot be cracked. Searching further, he finds a memory of his past self being asked to leave a gate claimed by the General Guild. When he refused, he slaughtered them all. There was no evidence of the Eye of God before, but Lee decides to test the same way now. He demands to know why Chulsung has not appeared, but Guangho appeals for mercy instead. Realizing he will get no answer, Lee smashes his neck. As a black ogre pulls away Yujin's body, Lee mutters that at least they would not interrupt him anymore. While studying the ogre corpses, Lee discovers something solid in one of their stomachs, the skill stone of the Eye of God. The ability allows him to inspect the status and inventory of any player or monster below his level. Holding the stone, Lee smirks, preparing to plunge farther into the blackness of the nothingness. In the General Guild's conference room, footage of Lee plays on the screen. One player thinks there is nothing left to evaluate, since Lee's strength is already beyond their reach. Another expresses amazement that he could combat creatures empowered by the medicine. The first says that it was expected, as even with the medicine, monsters remain merely monsters. A player mentions the conflict is not over because the Black Ogre Gate remains open. When asked why, another reveals that Lee is waiting for his prey, not happy with simply the Eye of God. The room grows hushed as they understand he is waiting for Chulsung himself. Chulsung enters, and everyone hails him as master. Clutching his head in wrath, he wants to know where the enhancer is. One player kneels and urges withdrawal, noting that while development is complete, the final product will take 3 days. Chulsung cautions that if Lee acquires the unique class skill from the level 51 Golem Gate, they would never defeat him. The player assures him they will stop it even at the expense of their lives. Chulsung wonders if they are convinced Lee will die in 3 days. When the player confidently agrees, Chulsung grabs his head and kills him with poison, proclaiming that ineptitude is intolerable. He orders complete security around the lab and tells all guild players to guard it. Their goal is to murder Lee in the level 51 Golem dungeon and grab everything he has. Meanwhile, within the gate, Lee knows Chulsung might not appear, implying the enhancer is not yet ready. He considers wiping down the guild headquarters, but concludes killing only Chulsung would be more effective. Using the guild's influence would serve his plans better. From his prior life's knowledge, he recalls their next aim is the level 51 Silver Armor dungeon, which holds a rare talent. He realizes Chulsung's strategy to secure both the skill and a greater enhancer. Determined to stop him, Lee engages stealth and leaves the gate, knowing the guild's eyes are still on him. Outside, he finds Minsu, who discloses the enhancer factory is in Paju. Using the Eye of God, Lee checks Minsu's data and urges him to be careful, warning that standing too close could be deadly. Minsu says he expected Lee to obtain the Eye of God, but witnessing it personally is disturbing. He points out the factory's exact location and exhibits the car he got with the money from selling the ogre horn. As they approach into Paju, Lee allocates his over 2,000 bonus points into concentration, boosting it to 2,786. He reasons that focus improves the Eye of God, enabling him read opponents' stats and vulnerabilities more precisely. Since his great strength is difficult to control, improving focus is important. The system acknowledges his progress, offering him the title King of Concentration. At the Poison Enhancer factory in Paju, Lee and Minsu step out of the van. Lee instantly casts Paralyze on his friend, an ability unlocked after attaining 1,000 concentration points. It disables one sense of a lower-level opponent for 5 seconds. The system asks which sense to block, and Lee selects vision. As Min-soo gets blind, Lee tells him to wait outside. Lee punches the factory wall with enormous force, making the entire building shake. Inside, technicians fear, thinking it is an earthquake. When one spots Lee and notifies the others, mayhem unfolds. Enraged that Chul-sung is not there, Lee smashes the wall again, inflicting additional wreckage. Outside, Min-soo watches the swaying skyscraper, not believing what he sees. Spotting a security camera, Lee talks straight to it, saying that their boosters would soon be destroyed. He gestures at a pillar and declares that once it falls, everything ends. He proposes a transaction, saying there are items he wants from Chul-sung, then crushes the camera. The next morning, Lee sits on the ruins as Chul-sung arrives. Using the Eye of God, Lee scans his metrics. Realizing this, Chul-sung curses at him. Lee notes his poison skill, capable of causing death with an 80% likelihood. Chul-sung considers him a coward, but Lee reminds him that without his support, Chul-sung would have died in the Black Ogre dungeon. According to Lee, Triumph decides who the coward truly is. Chul-sung attacks with poison, but Lee evades and closes the distance. His speed surprises Chul-sung. Grabbing him by the neck, Lee withstands the poison with his armor. He remarks that only a stronger enhancer could have pierced it. Using the Eye of Reversal, Lee reads Chul-sung's memories, discovering his skills, items, and the ultimate hidden dungeon. Chul-sung chuckles suddenly, and before Lee can react, he throws poison toward Min-soo. It hits, infecting him. Consumed by hatred, Lee ends Chul-sung with a single punch. Retrieving the poison skill stone from the dead, he runs to his comrade, who begins to heal after absorbing it. Lee scolds Min-soo for standing too close. When Min-soo wonders if the poison skill now belongs to him, Lee confirms. Min-soo praises him, but Lee dismisses it and urges him to prepare for future gates. They will require the equipment from them. That day honors the death of Chul-sung, once the most dreaded man in Korea. The next day, headlines across Korea pronounce Criminal of the Century Chul-sung killed and general guild leaders detained. Reporters query who defeated the underground commander. Lee hears the news as Min-soo advises publicizing the truth, since the public now regards Chul-sung's killer as a hero. Lee declines, stating that athletes who pursue fame always meet disastrous ends. In a world where everyone hunts for power, admitting his identity would bring harm. Many would seek his skills or possess technologies like the poison enhancer capable of destroying him. He states that when all ends, he will create his own monument to memorialize his achievements. Reading a message inquiring about the Poison King's missing poison, he observes that after death, only a person's abilities and items are appreciated. Setting his sights forward, he reveals their next target, the unique class talent concealed in a level 50 silver armor dungeon. The records name it Assassin, and though he does not know its power, he feels following his former journey step by step will be the fastest method. A system warning reveals his bonus points continue to climb, possibly due to the knowledge learned from the General Guild. Since he alone did not reset, his progress parallels a primary plot mission. He aims to collect crucial goods and proceed faster. Min-soo, now stronger with Chul-sung's poison skill and a bag of enhancers, may hunt alongside him. Though destroying the facility curtailed their supply, it was still the appropriate choice. Min-soo advises creating the alias Joker Kim for Lee's game account, citing it as a legendary moniker from the past. Lee accepts, and tells him to reach level 34 before their next dungeon. By January 29th, Min-soo clears the level 34 Blue Pheasant dungeon, while Lee progresses to 37. Their quick success creates rumors online. Some suggest that Joker Kim might be Lee's ally, while others insist the Great Lone Lee never maintains associates. That night, Lee leans against a wall, conversing to Min-soo over the phone. Min-soo praises the enhancements, stating beasts disintegrate before his poison. Lee advises him not to underestimate his foes and to call once he clears it. Hanging up, Lee reflects that nearly a month has passed since the reset. Without resting, he has advanced swiftly. Opening his status window, he assigns all bonus points to agility, gaining the title King of Agility, and unlocks a new skill, Gravity Control. Testing it on a tree, he increases the weight to 100 tons, but the system rejects it. Lowering it to 2 tons, the tree crumbles beneath the force, and he gets an incredible sense of power. A warning flashes. His decisions will drastically affect the future. Just then his phone rings. Minsu's frightened voice breaks through, saying that a level 100 lichen has appeared. The call goes dead. Lee realizes the system's warning refers to this particular moment. He races from Minsu's gate, knowing the future he has been manipulating has finally begun to materialize. Minsu lies injured outside the level 38 gate, unable to breathe. When Lee comes, he quickly questions what happened. Minsu explains that a level 100 monster is inside, confused how such a beast appeared in a gate meant for 38. Lee notices the deep wound on his arm, and Minsu reveals the hit never touched him. The wind alone tore his flesh. Suspecting the dungeon may store an item of same level, Lee moves toward the gate. Minsu cries for him to halt, but Lee ignores him and steps inside. Within the dungeon, Lee sees serpents with flames glowing at their tails. Believing them to be the gate's major threat, he crushes one underfoot and uses its body to strike down the rest. The silence that follows makes him mistrust Minsu's statements until a deep growl rips through the air. A gigantic lichen emerges, brandishing a scythe. Activating the Eye of God, Lee confirms it as a level 100 lichen, a result of the butterfly effect. The warped future has arrived. The lichen attacks with its scythe, but Lee dodges and retaliates with terrible accuracy. He whips its face with the serpent's body, but the beast scarcely flinches. When it unleashes its execute talent, Lee evades again, closes the distance, and slams it to the ground with a flick to the head. A volley of attacks ensues until the creature drops lifeless. Level-up signals fill his vision, his level skyrocketing to 62. Among the riches, he notices the lichen's broadsword, its power great, although trapped behind a level requirement of 100. Frustrated, he stows it away and finishes carving the creature before exiting the basement. Outside, the news surprises him. Lichens are surfacing worldwide, in New York, Tokyo, and beyond. The World Player Association president urged worldwide solidarity, while Board, America's top player, deems the crisis beyond comprehension. Watching the pandemonium unfold, Lee reveals the truth. His deeds affected the future, summoning the lichens into this realm. The president proclaims that fresh gates will not exist until the fiercest monsters are slain. Lee realizes this implies the level 39 gates remain sealed. Minsu finds a temporary respite, but Lee knows it merely delays their progress. Turning away from the television, he declares their next move. They will head to the airport. Their goal is Japan, where the lichens await. Lee and Minsu arrive at the airport, masks covering their faces. The receptionist informs them that all flights to Japan are cancelled owing to the lichen epidemic. Minsu answers he has already received the same answer from every airline. The receptionist, bewildered by their insistence, warns them to leave at once, saying even the president cannot overturn the prohibition, and that they would die if they went. Minsu urges Lee to remove his mask. Since the airport is practically empty, Lee takes it off. The receptionist recognized him instantly. When Lee tells he must go to Japan to kill the lichen, the man hesitates but agrees it is risky even for him. Lee sighs, pulls out the lichen's broadsword, and drops it as it refuses to equip. The receptionist stares in surprise, thinking that Lee meant the World Player Association's private jet when he asked for a comfy plane. With aid from Japan's government and the association, Lee and Minsu soon embark on a sumptuous aircraft. The peacefulness of the expedition dissipates abruptly when Nami, a researcher, begins detailing the lichen's unrivaled defense. Lee cuts her off, requesting to relax, but she argues it is for humanity's sake. Irritated, Lee dismisses her. Startled, she claims no guy has ever disregarded her like that, and tells him that hundreds are fighting the lichen in Japan. When he asks how to silence her, she refuses, claiming humanity depends on him. Lee finds her statements troubling and declares he no longer wishes to fight, leaving her stunned. After the captain calls her to the cockpit, Lee finally relaxes, but Nami soon returns with critical news. The lichen has begun calling monsters from other dungeons to destroy cities. When the plane lands, they prepare to separate ways. Minsu clutches Nami closely, pretending to be a defenseless orphan. While Lee reflects, she still does not realize he is a player. Nami vows they will meet again, and advises Lee to head to the Tokyo hotel surrounded by skyscrapers. Lee nods, and goes out with Minsu, who wishes the moment had lasted longer. Soon, they reach a gate, shimmering with gray light. Lee investigates it, realizing it is another effect of the lichen's pandemonium. The city's destruction validates Nami's intel. The lichen is opening gates and unleashing monsters non-stop. Minsu explains that Japanese gamers are following it and waiting for the appropriate opportunity to strike. He offers to contact them, but Lee declines and points toward the gate, opting to handle it first. When fire serpents appear, Lee questions why the villagers have not cleared them. Minsu reveals the gate opened early because of them. Lee reasons that as long as the monsters remain, the gate will stay open. He tells Minsu to release poison at the front while he handles the rest. As they fight, Lee gains bonus points from the butterfly effect and grows worried, remembering how it previously generated a level 100 monster inside a level 38 dungeon. Minsu suddenly informs that the lichen is heading toward them. Lee pauses, shocked, and wonders why it would come here. Minsu gives Lee live footage of the lichen. The creature launches a tremendous energy blast that shoots toward the cameraman. The man screams for aid before the screen fades black. Moments thereafter, an emergency message travels across the nation, calling all players to arms. The message warns that the country stands on the edge of ruin, and that the United States is considering a nuclear strike. Citizens clamor against it, calling for the heroes to protect them. Lee reacts with irritation, asking why they would unleash a nuclear on something he could smash easily. The scenario moves to the battlefield where players struggle against the lichen and its army. Bullets and magic strikes fly. However, the beast easily deflects them and retaliates with devastating cuts. Players shout orders, yet their attempts fail. One mutters that if only he were level 60, things may be different. Another recognizes that if the lichen breaks through, the country will crumble. Back with Lee, Minsu reports that the lichen has changed direction. It is currently heading for the nuclear power plant, and calamity is less than an hour away. Lee clenches his teeth, curses the beast, and chooses to proceed. He pours all 1,545 extra points into strength, boosting his total to 5,852. As they hurry forward, he asks who once held the highest strength. Minsu recalls Board from the United States, who had roughly 1,500 strength at level 658. Lee cuts him off, claiming such numbers mean nothing now, since the world has changed. They eventually reach the battlefield, where tired players are barely holding the line. Explosions shake the ground. Lee surveys the chaos and mutters that it is a complete mess. Minsu points out that the nuclear plant is nearby, and that practically every gamer in Japan has gathered. Lee queries if the best Japanese players who finished the final dungeon are present, then scoffs that they must have run away. Minsu reveals Japan's envoy vanished after the reset, and Lee dismisses them all as worthless. A player notices them and says something, but the language barrier leaves them bewildered. Lee jokes that maybe he asked about lunch, and Minsu laughs weakly. Then the lichen's mocking laughter ripples throughout the battlefield. Lee praises it cunning for tormenting them, and instructs Minsu to aid the others while he handles the beast. Climbing a building, Lee sees the action below. Hundreds of players line rooftops, releasing attacks that light up the sky. Fireballs, arrows, and thunderbolts shower down, shaking the city. The lichen counters, shattering buildings and scattering players. Their leader rallies them, lifting a fireball high, and orders everyone to strike together. The explosion heralds a powerful bombardment that forces the lichen to one knee. Cheers erupt as they assume triumph is imminent, but the creature rises in rage. The lichen lifts its blade and prepares a powerful circular slash targeted for the buildings. Despair fills the players as they know the attack will annihilate them. From above, Lee watches the destruction unfold and thinks it is finally time to join in. Lee performs the petrify skill on the lichen, freezing it in place. The players watch in disbelief, recognizing the skill. One murmurs that it must be petrify, but another swears the king of strength could not possibly be there. Lee leaps from the skyscraper, lands before the unmoving beast, and flicks its head. The lichen dies instantly, and his level raises numerous times at once. The players erupt in shouts, praising him as their savior and monarch. Though he cannot understand their remarks, Lee guesses they are praising him. He pulls out his dagger, investigates the corpse, and finds a glowing level 100 mana stone. Holding it, he recalls how mana stones formerly substituted coal, their value tied to the monster's level. He grabs for the lichen's broadsword, but it vanishes into his inventory. A system warning warns him he cannot equip it until level 100. Says that his hubris was not misplaced. Lee orders her to ready the jet, adding he will handle the lichen in the United States as well. She informs him that it was previously destroyed with a missile in the desert. Lee recognizes this, stating their large territory made it feasible. Nami adds that Japan's emperor and prime minister wish to congratulate him, but he refuses the offer and focuses instead on scanning other players with the eye of God. At the airport, A big crowd gathers to meet him. Reporters question if he will confront future monsters. Lee says that it depends on how the country treats him. He recalls that Japan treated him kindly, noting how more people had watched his struggle than the Prime Minister's address. After a brief exchange, he disappears with Minsu using stealth. Nami calls after him, stating the President of Korea is on his way. Lee answers that she should inform the president he is busy and will meet him later. As he goes, he contemplates about the coming of a particular dungeon. Now, at level 71, he remembers that in the past, it appeared when his stats hit 4,000. His current total approaches 15,000, although the gate has not opened. He suspects it requires all bonus points to be spent. After applying them to strength, boosting it to 8,757, the system confirms the opening of a particular dungeon. Lee smiles, recognizing he was right. The butterfly effect skill had caused the occurrence, but the gate's location remained unknown and would close within 30 seconds once identified. Hearing Nami's continuous calls, Lee cancels his stealth and reappears. He asks where the president is. Inside the VIP area, the president welcomes him warmly and praises him for representing the nation, noting that relations with Japan have improved because of him. Lee reacts with respect. The president says he undoubtedly did the same in the past too, and apologizes for not expressing gratitude sooner. Lee assures him it is all right. The president announces intentions to reward him with a higher title than national merit, but Lee declines and says he has a request. He considers sharing the secret of the unique gates, but decides against it, fearing intervention. Instead, he says that a golden unique gate has opened. The president is astonished and demands confirmation. Lee explains it is true and warns that a monster stronger than the lichen lies within. He adds that the gate closes within 30 seconds of discovery and must be located fast. The president orders quick action and guarantees full assistance. Lee observes that he has stated only truth, however he buries the portion regarding the dungeon's rewards. Wanting more than just government aid, he finally demands that the president keep the matter private and avoid making it public. In the control room of the National Crisis Management Office, Lee stands beside the president. The president says that if Lee's words are true, then the Golden Gate could become as large a threat to Korea as the lichen was to Japan. Lee says that from experience, the beast inside will be far stronger. An order is issued to scour the country using cameras. Lim, head of National Crisis Management, presents a concern. If the gate closes within 30 seconds and a monster stronger than the lichen comes, why not send other players instead? Lee says he must be the first to enter, saying that the Golden Gate not only holds a fearsome monster, but also gives uncommon gifts such as special skills and equipment. Lim considers this unbelievable, noting that over 100 players in the control room have regressed, yet none had encountered such a dungeon. Lee acknowledges this is why he hesitated to talk, but he refused to lie. Whether they trust him or not is their option. Lim turns to the president, alleging that Lee's desire hints to monopolization. Keeping the search secret would allow him to claim all prizes, making him too powerful, like an uncontrollable weapon. The president requests for suggestions. Lim recommends preventing Lee from entering dungeons and sending government players instead. Lee considers bitterly that perhaps he should not have killed the lichen so rapidly. He pulls out the lichen's broadsword, which slips on the floor since he still cannot equip it. He notes that Korea has its own lichen, and maybe leaving it alive would have made them comprehend the severity of the world, where players strive ceaselessly for existence and power. Lee gestures to the sword and questions Lim directly. Monopolization is prevalent, driven by instinct and ambition. He asks if this yearning for strength is wrong, but Lim remained mute. Lee turns to the president for judgment. The president agrees that if a dungeon does not belong to the government, then they cannot limit admission. Monopolization is part of a player's abilities. Lee asks if that means he may freely access the secret dungeon, since he received no prize for killing the lichen in Korea. The president agrees. Lee states that he will accept this special gate as recompense and claims rights to any future ones. He then demands Lim's departure, stating that as head of crisis management, Lim should have backed strength, not dreaded it. The president recommends calm, but Lee pushes, calling Lim's reasoning pathetic. While the conversation continues, satellites locate the unique gate, and Lim is discharged. Later, in the car, Lee observes that people only listen when he goes to extremes. Minsu confesses everyone trembled as he talked. Lee wonders why they never listened the first time. The gate is located in Socho, near the seashore. Minsu tells him to keep vigilant, even if he believes nothing can harm him. Lee agrees as they enter the jungle where the gate lights softly. It is marked as a level A dungeon, however both find it curiously low. Then a system message emerges, indicating that the player who constructed the special gate is Lee. It warns that others can potentially gain exceptional skills and overtake him. Knowing every player would receive the message, Lee prepares to enter as the 30-second countdown begins. Inside, his vision flashes red. All stats restricted. All skills and items disallowed. The jolt unsettles him. A crimson goblin arrives, laughing at the naive human. It is the level 200 dungeon guardian. Lee understands the Eye of God cannot activate. The goblin assures him not to fear, stating that is not his true opponent. This dungeon is not about fighting monsters, but about something else. It advises him to do his best, curious to see what he can achieve, and discloses that Lee is already famous in their reality. Lee stands motionless, pondering about this odd renown. Lee asks the red goblin if this is entertaining for him. The goblin acts afraid and begs him to stop, but Lee finds the dialogue meaningless. A system notice comes, explaining that this level 2 unique dungeon is not for monster hunting. It instructs him to unlock one attribute to clear the dungeon. Lee chose strength, believing that since he cannot appraise the circumstances, guessing is all he can do. The goblin advises that choosing strength will make the challenge harder. Lee commands him to be silent, grabs him by the neck, and demands to know who the actual opponent is. A fresh notice emerges, and Lee is taken into a huge desert, where a tall structure looms. The system urges him to claim the stat rune at the top. He assumes the rune boosts characteristics and regrets saving the goblin. Inside, a spiral staircase winds higher, and a timer displays 18 hours until death. Panic grabs him at the notion of dying without his numbers or talents. He begins climbing, but arrows suddenly shoot from hidden traps, cutting his cheek. Soon, a boulder rolls down the steps, forcing him to retreat. Realizing power is useless here, he curses his choice, but keeps walking. Exhausted, he hides behind fallen boulders near the tower's base, breathing deeply. His body feels entirely human now. Climbing again seems impossible, but the countdown still shows 16 hours left. As he leans on the wall, he examines the firmly piled stone blocks and comes up with a fresh idea. The purpose is merely to obtain the rune, not to climb. Destroying the tower might work. He lifts a massive boulder and hurls it at the wall. The stones crack, and the structure begins to crumble. Within moments, the entire skyscraper crumbles to the ground. Among the rubble, Lee finds a luminous rune. It is the strength stat rune, granting 2,000 points. Relief fills him as he scoops it up and eats it. The machine announces the dungeon is cleaned and begins bringing him back. When he emerges, the red goblin watches in disbelief. He screams that Lee destroyed the entire tower and that the rune was meant for another player. Trembling, he pleads for his life, but Lee goes up and chops him down. A final notification emerges, pronouncing the dungeon cleaned and the gate closing in 3 minutes. Lee sits on a sofa, reflecting that more than one exceptional gate has opened. This means another person now has the chance to cross 1,000 points in an attribute. Someone has already attained that level without even getting to level 300. Since several of Lee's stats are still under 1,000, his king titles are not at risk. But he realizes he must act. He opens his stat window and adds 1,400 points each to mana and stamina. Mana climbs to 1853 and stamina to 1990. The system awards him 2 new achievements, King of Mana and King of Stamina. Each title provides a new skill. Mana restriction halts mana flow within range for 5 seconds, but blood flow increases in enemy circulation, causing higher damage. Relief sweeps over him as he learns he can now bend stats to his will. Then a system warning appears, explaining that his actions are unsettling the future. He frowns, uncertain what it implies. At the World Player Association's United States branch, members discuss the new achievement. They agree it could only be Lee. One mentions Hella, but she calmly says it is great if it was him. Others protest, recalling how Lee once ignored their demands and ridiculed them. Hella defends him, stating those who know him recognize he is not terrible. They confirm that Lee created the special gate, meaning anyone can now obtain special skills and rival him. Concern grows about someone so uncontrolled holding such power. Hella maintains he is not dangerous, but unpredictable. They ask her about her own gate experience. She reveals that there were no creatures to hunt, simply a tower with a rune at the top. A red goblin escorted her, and without him she would have died. Swallowing the rune granted her 2,000 mana. Hearing this, they understand Lee's achievements are even bigger. Some fear he might have already cleared many unique gates. The panel concludes that the association must take control of future gates. They order Hela to visit Korea and monitor reports. She understands they want her to exceed Lee, though she has no desire to. Meanwhile, Minsu reveals to Lee that the group purports to serve the greater good, but acts much like a guild. Its members are elite players who chose fame over fortune. Acting as a planetary army, the association manages dungeon access and receives government financing. Lee understands their influence, but knows hidden intentions reside within. He asks about the player who cleared the United States gate. Minsu tells him it was Hela, known as the Witch, who controls mana through buffs and debuffs. She once held the title of King of Mana, and now after gaining 2,000 mana from the tower, she threatens his status again. With more gates, she might rival him, and talk of her might is already spreading. Just suddenly, Lee's phone rings with an emergency alert. A level 220 gargoyle has surfaced in Bundangu, Songnam-si, and Gyeonggi-do. Citizens are ordered to leave as a national emergency is declared. The creature, with a human body, dragon wings, and fire breath, is already killing everything in sight. Approaching the scene, Lee speaks with the president. The president appeals for help, alleging 3 gargoyles had demolished Silicon Valley, including key IT business offices. Lee says that he is already on his way and instructs the president to vacate the area. The president agrees, but adds that rumors are growing. People believe Lee himself developed the special gates and caused the calamities. Lee chuckles and says he is not some god. The one who designed the system also made the monsters. The president agrees, but adds that people now believe Lee summons monsters to get stronger. Lee believes there is some truth to that, but says that if he genuinely possessed such power, he would summon them right in front of his house. The president acknowledges his position and assures him the areas have been evacuated, wishing him luck. Lee reminds him that in return for chasing the gargoyles, he wants to be told first when the next unique gate appears. The president asks if this is a prerequisite for fighting, but Lee stresses it is a need. The president agrees, and Lee ends the call as they near the place. He parks and informs Minsu they will continue on foot. Minsu spots someone ahead and asks who it is. Lee glances and notes that the president was meant to clear the area. He shouts out, and the woman responds. Activating the Eye of God, he recognizes her stats and realizes it is Hela. She embraces him cordially as Brother Lee, which surprises him. He grabs her hand to confirm something, and uses the Eye of Reverse to glimpse her memories. He watches the Red Goblin guiding her in the special dungeon, telling her to get stronger and kill him. Disgusted, Lee mutters that the creature is pathetic, and vows to discover whoever designed the game. He tries to peek deeper into her memories of the final dungeon, seeing her damaged but begging him to finish the game. When he asks who wounded her, she resists and uses mana to block him. Amused by her skill, he lets it go and wonders why she came. Hela admits she came to visit him. Minsu advises Lee not to trust her. She goes to Minsu and teases him, stating she didn't realize Lee had such a cute friend. Lee presses her again for a response. Hela smiles and says he still needs her, just as before. Lee challenges her to prove it, curious to see whether she can. The tension feels eerily familiar to him. A loud crash stops them as 3 gargoyles appear. Lee wonders whether they have any flaws. Hela admits she knows none. One gargoyle charges, and Lee immediately pulls both her and Minsu away. The monster takes flight. Lee employs gravity control, setting its weight to 2 tons, but nothing happens. At 3 tons, it groans, and at 4 tons, it crashes down. Lee lunges onto it, holds its neck, and smashes it back to the ground as its screams resound through the air. Minsu and Hela watch as dust rises from the crash, concealing the scene. The gargoyle eventually emerges from the ruins, and Hela gasps in surprise. Minsu calls for Lee, unaware of his location. Lee steps out from behind the fallen stones, breathing heavily, admitting he almost died. He uses Petrify on the gargoyle, stabs its neck, and triggers blood flow, causing it to collapse. Minsu knows this is genuine. Lee has killed the gargoyle. Checking his numbers, Lee sees his level grow from 71 to 93. He then turns toward the 2 surviving gargoyles. One breathes fire, but Lee dodges rapidly. The heat passes past Minsu, who comments on its intensity. Unable to stand by, Hela steps forward and casts buffs, improving Lee's strength by 200. Lee looks at her, amused by her effort. While Minsu warns that the gargoyles are attacking again, Lee activates his armor, and the system alerts him that his talents have strengthened through concentrated mana. He leaps high, grabs both gargoyles by the neck, and slams them to the ground, killing them instantaneously. His level rises again as he stares at his blood-covered palms, amazed at his own power. Hila reminds him she has supported him like this previously. When he questions her, she frowns and claims he never changes. Before he can reply, the president telephones, praising him for saving the country. Lee guesses he watched everything live, and the president confirms. Lee directs him to give special gate positions through the crisis management office. A system notification displays for all three. The president reports a new special gate has opened. Lee frowns, wondering why the system gave no warning, and suspects the god behind it wishes to test or destroy him. Hila reads the message aloud. The barrier appeared because of Lee's overwhelming might, now at level 117. It is in Gangso-gu, and she offers to accompany him, pledging not to meddle. Lee asks why she wants to follow. Hila says she traveled to Korea for him and refuses to obey the World Player Association. She insists she decides her own course. Lee accepts, under the condition that she disclose every piece of information she receives. She says she will do anything for him. Minsu mutters that her buffs are useful, but wonders her motivations. Hila answers that Lee must save the world and finish the game. Minsu doubts her remarks, but she insists her motivation is personal. She reminds Lee of what he once claimed, that gamers will dominate the world when the game stopped. Lee says he does not recall, and she smiles, stating those words now lead her. Lee shakes his head, recognizing he might have encouraged something dangerous. Still, he smiles slightly as they head back to the car together. Lee, Minsu, and Hila stand before the unusual dungeon gate. It is a level 3 dungeon, limited to 2 players, ranked A+ in difficulty. Lee notes the shift and steps closer. Hila asks if she should join, but he shakes his head, suggesting it could be harmful. She agrees and watches as he enters alone. Inside, a red goblin waits. The moment it sees Lee, it recognizes him and responds uncomfortably. Lee detects something odd and demands to know what it is hiding. The goblin hesitates, so Lee activates Eye of God, showing its actual strength, level 300 with all stats at 3000. Grabbing the goblin by the head, he pushes it to explain. Panicking, the goblin discloses the dungeon's aim, to block enemies arriving via the tunnels below. Lee listens as it discusses the setup. He must stop the animals from crossing the ravine. When he asks what kind of monsters, the goblin says they are gargoyles, level 220. Hearing this, Lee recalls murdering 3 earlier that day, and cautions the goblin not to lie. As he goes away, the goblin asks if he is really alone. Lee confirms, and the system declares the mission has begun. Survive 3 hours or die. Lee jumps into the ravine as the goblin smirks overhead, certain his death is certain. Soon a swarm of gargoyles appears. Using gravity control, paralysis, and petrify, Lee dodges their assaults and crushes them with ease. He drains their blood using blood flow and levels up again. Before he can recover, a second wave arrives. Instead of fear, a grin grows across his face as he prepares for more. Above, the red goblin warns Hala to leave, but she refuses, saying she is a player too. Ignoring its objections, she leaps down to join Lee. When he asks why she followed, she reveals she had a horrible feeling. He asks about Minsu, and she assures him he remains outside. Her arrival improves his skills as mana flow concentrates, lessening the dungeon's complexity. Lee looks around in surprise as the gargoyles abruptly morph into goblins. Frustrated, he smashes the earth, killing them all instantaneously. He understands someone is manipulating the dungeon, testing his boundaries. Hila observes his tight demeanor and asks what is wrong, but he shakes it off. When she volunteers to deal with the red goblin, Lee silently acknowledges her allegiance, recognizing she may have been his buddy in a prior life. Later, Lee faces the red goblin again, clutching its head tightly. Trembling, it maintains it merely followed orders. Lee's tone intensifies as he demands to know who gave those commands, his patience finally gone. Lee listens as the red goblin pleads for compassion, vowing to tell the truth if spared. It explains that their deity controls the game channel, Lee queries if it is indeed a god, and the goblin insists it is, claiming it observes everything within the game. Lee smirks and lifts his middle finger to the air, knowing the god must be watching. The goblin acknowledges the deity interfered since Lee upset the game's balance. Lee frowns, noting out they made him this way. The goblin claims ignorance, saying it just obeyed orders to boost the dungeon complexity when Lee entered. Disappointed, Lee sighs and crushes its head, ending its existence. Gila walks forward and claims he can meet the god in the final dungeon. Lee looks at her, fascinated. She says that the deity is the one who invented the entire game. A system notice indicates Lee cleared the level 3 special dungeon and rewards him with 3,000 bonus points. Lee wonders if they will have to fight that god, and Gila nods. He wonders if the deity is human, but she admits she never saw it. When he asks who killed her earlier, she names Park Musung. Hearing the name, Lee instructs her to stay quiet and activates Eye of Reversal to study her memories. In her memories, Musung stands before her, mocking her vulnerability without Lee. He labels her the witch Gila, breaks her skills, and stabs her as she falls, thinking she must tell Lee. Lee freezes the vision and asks what she intended to tell him then. Gila says that he can already see it. When questioned, she reveals Musung has a sword talent that could pierce his armor, albeit she does not know how. Before Lee can question more, a system warning appears, suggesting the gate will close in 3 minutes. Outside, Gila checks her status pane in surprise, realizing the points are real. Lee distributes his bonus points into strength, boosting it past 21,000. Minsu groans with dizziness, and Gila says their stats may be harming their bodies. Lee tests his might, activates armor, and punches the earth, making a deep crater. A notification appears. Armor has evolved to level 3, unlocking Final Blow, a skill that absorbs excess power and discharges it at the cost of most of his health. Minsu panics, imploring him to halt before collapsing the region. Lee observes the skill and mutters it is pointless unless he confronts someone who can actually challenge him. Soon, news spreads of a player exceeding 1,000 stat points inside a month. Analysts declare the world has changed, and new strategies are needed. Lee sees the news and smiles, expecting stronger players will finally emerge. As special gates develop across the planet, players grow faster and fight stronger monsters. Watching this, Lee decides to suspend his dungeon hunts, allowing others catch up. The faster they grow, the more the world evolves, and the higher his personal rewards become. Yet one thought persists in his head: Park Musung. Lee and Gila stand before the sculptures. Gila chuckles as she sees Lee's monument showing the middle finger, calling it silly. Lee notes Park Musung's statue is smaller and coated in graffiti, never renovated since it was created. Lee calls the president, complaining about the monuments in Gwanghwamun Square. He says his statue should be moved because he has not achieved exploits like Admiral Yi Sun-sin or King Sejong. The president reminds him he saved the globe, but Lee claims his acts were for selfish benefit, making the statue embarrassing. The president says it was picked by public vote, naming Lee a hero. However, Lee still wants it be moved. The president hesitantly agrees. Lee then asks about removing Park Musung's statue. Before the president can answer, Lee destroys it. He claims the deed is being streamed live so Musung would see his reputation damaged and be compelled to forsake his false hero persona. He urges the president to erect his statue in front of Musung's house instead. The Blue House replies promptly, airing the tape widely. The public is astonished, questioning why Musung maintains mute. They recollect his earlier power, but note his absence now. Gila tells Musung became a player only 5 years before the last dungeon arrived, reaching to the top during that little period. Most assume becoming a player comes from finding a gate or acquiring mana from monsters. Lee understands Musung has not yet awakened in this timeline. Minsu calls this fantastic news, and Lee agrees. Musung must confront strong creatures to become a player again. This gives Lee time to prepare. When Musung eventually recovers, Lee wants to either execute him promptly or brand him a traitor, forcing him into hiding. Lee contacts the president again, asking for an article presenting Musung as the worst man in history, hiding behind a hero's mask. He is certain Musung will not stay mute after that. Elsewhere, a crimson goblin forces stat stones into a gargoyle's neck, offering its strength to kill Lee. He weighs saving some for himself, but thinks the gargoyle is his only hope. If it kills Lee, it will lead all monsters. Meanwhile, other players continue clearing gates, assisting Lee indirectly. He waits for the level 51 gate in Korea, which grants the assassin class skill. Lying Do suggests he rest, and Minsu agrees. A system warning appears, claiming his actions are substantially affecting the future. Lee lies back, bewildered. Hila asks about it, and he answers that another level 200 monster is about to appear. Suddenly, a gate opens. A level 51 silver armor gate, crowded with players, graded difficulty A. Hila says they have no time to rest. Lee smirks, claiming they will achieve 2 goals today as the gargoyle-like figure approaches and the combat begins. The beast lands heavily, rocking the ground. Lee promptly summons his armor and charges forward. The beast growls and catches both his arms in its hold. Lee flinches, then activates the Eye of God. The scan reveals the monster's level, 230, with stats much above average. He goes to Minsu and Hila, wondering what the number should be. Hila replies they should not surpass 3,000. Minsu warns him not to waste time and to finish it swiftly, reminding him that hesitation brings curses. Lee mutters in surprise as he reads over 20,000 total figures. Hila freezes, unable to process the number. Lee grabs the monster by the neck and throws its face into the ground, but it rises again. He uses Petrify, although the effect lasts barely 3 seconds before shattering. Lee realizes the skill might be too weak against such high stats. Kaylee the gargoyle attacks with enormous ferocity. Lee dodges, while Minsu identifies the move, remarking it has never been this powerful. Hila detects the vast mana around it, and advises Lee to keep vigilant. Lee holds its head again, pounding it down again, until it finally falls. He levels up multiple times. Catching his breath, Lee wondered if the beast had absorbed stat runes. Minsu notes out they entered the gate quickly, therefore no one else could have altered it. Lee nods, understanding something unusual is happening again. Hila, worried, queries how a level 230 monster could have nearly 20,000 stats. She asks Lee where his power genuinely comes from and whether he is the one building the special gates. Lee agrees it is partly accurate. He triggers the gates but does not construct them. As they converse, Lee draws his knife and chops open the monster's body. Inside he finds many stat stones. Hila gasps, while Lee laughs, realizing what this means. To confirm, he feeds one stone to the silver armor monster and scans it again with the Eye of God. When he spots a stat rune inside, the truth becomes plain. Lee smirks and curses the red goblin, knowing just who is behind it.